Hello and welcome to the CLN podcast. I'm your host Nadia, and coming up on today's show is a fun conversation with the lovely Robynn Weldon of Studio Miranda. First up, a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome to all the new listeners and a big hello to all you returning ones. A very happy new year to all of you from all of us, and we wish you all the best in 2017. And I hope you all get the fresh start that you're looking for. Thank you so much for all of the comments and reviews that you guys have left in 2016. It would be great if you like the podcast that you could leave a comment on iTunes or Stitcher or Player FM, or of course if you just want to leave a comment for the guest, you can do so on the blog. Another little bit of housekeeping from episode 5. I know you're all wondering who won Gillian's pattern, Sakura, and the Debbie Bliss Falcon Aaron. And the magical random number generator has chosen comment number 5. To decide who gets to win the tunes, what I did was we had the comments running on the blog and also on Instagram, because there were some people who missed out on the podcast. So I combined all of these. I started with the people on the blog and then finished up with the people on Instagram. And comment number 5, you guys can work out for yourself if you log back on, is the lovely Evan O'Keefe. And it is not in any way planned or anything like that. The magical number generator did choose Evan, and the screenshot of those numbers are on the bottom of today's show notes. So Evan, thank you so much for your comments on the blog and Instagram promoting the show. And I will pass on your details to Gillian, and we'll get this to you as soon as we can. Now, today's podcast should have gone live right before Christmas, but if you follow me online on any of the social medias, you will know how sick I got right before Christmas. I had no voice, and there was no way to do the intro or the exit on the interview. So Robynn was so lovely to me, and she's been so supportive of the podcast and absolutely anything that I've done. So thanks so much, Robynn. And today's podcast, there is some mentions of Christmas and, of course, the gift along and Ravelry and stuff like that. But you can, of course, still follow the links and have a look at the gift along and what was happening. And you can still grab any of the patterns all the indie dyers joined, so you can still have a look at all of those. Now, I really hope you enjoy listening to Robynn. I absolutely love following her on Twitter, and in case you missed the review of Lost in the Woods on the blog in December, Robynn has teamed up with 2 other designers, Julia Günther and Emily Williams, to bring you 11 patterns which all come together in a beautiful book called Lost in the Woods. And Robynn came on the show to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the collaboration itself, the photography, the patterns, and also at Studio Miranda, how she designs, how they choose yarns, and just, I really hope you love Robynn as much as I do. Her personality comes across so well, and I just really, really hope you love it as much as I do. Another thing to note is that I am a stay-at-home mother. And as much as you plan for things in advance, they may not always happen. And joining us on the show is my youngest daughter, CLN, and she is 13 months old. So every now and again, I think in 3 places throughout the podcast, you'll have her little thoughts on what we're thinking about. And we were going to remove them from the recording and just re-record the questions, but it made us laugh so much that we just left them in there, and I hope it brings you a little bit of joy as well. So without further ado, I introduce you to the lovely Robynn Weldon. Good morning, Robynn, and welcome to the Cottage. And how are you this morning?
Good morning, Nadia. I am good. I've got my coffee. It's very misty out there and grey, but cozy in here. And as long as there's coffee, it's all good.
Same here. And for those listeners who may not have been introduced to you before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep. I am now living in Switzerland, but I'm originally from South Africa, mostly Cape Town. I moved to London. I stayed there for 11 years with my husband. He went over to study and I basically followed him. While I was there, I started an online yarn shop, Pearlessence. Ran that for 5 years, which was great. But then I had my first baby and she was a very demanding baby. And I just found that I was not able to balance the two at all. I wasn't doing either of them justice. So I sold the business. I was really lucky to find buyers who I love. They're great people and they're doing a great job. So that's really nice. I really like watching what Pearlessence is still doing out in the world without me. And then I moved to Switzerland. My husband's got family here and we wanted to be here for a long time. In the meantime, I had a second child right before we moved. So since then, that was almost 4 years ago, and I've been very much occupied with just trying to manage the 2 kids and learning the language and settling into a new country. But I've also been trying to ramp up a bit on the design front. And that's where I am now.
I absolutely love your latest designs. They're Lost in the Woods, which is a series of collections with yourself and 2 other designers. Can you tell us how that collaboration came about?
Yes, that was a really exciting thing. I spent far too much time on Twitter, and one of my Twitter friends is Julia, whose Twitter name is Asselnitz. She's in Germany. She's another designer. And she saw something that I Instagrammed about how much I love going out running in the forest and feeling like, oh, I can just choose any path and who knows which way I'm going to end up going this time. But it's being lost, but not really lost. And she emailed me that she was playing with the idea of doing a forest-themed collection because the forest is also a very special place for her. And would I be interested in joining in? Of course, I said yes. That sounded awesome. As much as I love designing and I love working for myself, I also really missed working in a team. I'd been working by myself for so long, it's kind of lonely. It's great being by yourself and having that flexibility, but it's also very different. I miss working with other people on a team project. So I was really excited at the chance to collaborate. And we brought in my friend Emily, also known as Flutterby Knits. She's Emily Williams. She's in Scotland. So we've got the 3 of us in Scotland, Germany, and here in Switzerland. We're all people who love the forest. I think Emily is the most outdoorsy of us. She loves the forest, the beach, the mountains, everything. She's always out there on her bike or her skis or something. Julia and I are probably a bit more homebody than that, but we still love getting out in the forest. So we were all coming from a similar perspective on finding the forest a great source of inspiration, being experienced at working by ourselves, but excited to work together. And that was, Julia originally contacted me in summer last year, 2015. And since autumn was clearly the best season for releasing it, we couldn't get that done in time for last year. We picked on this year. And yeah, we came up with a whole project management system, which we really didn't use to its fullest advantage. But we did a lot of chatting on Slack. I'm waffling on about this a lot, but I found the process really interesting.
It's such a cohesive book for 3 different people in 3 different countries. Like, you would never know that from looking at the collection. And one of the things that I love about it is how each item or each like accessory or garment is then photographed in a particular season as well, but it's almost magical because it, like, you can almost see kind of like spring and like the seasons change throughout the woods, and it's beautiful. It really is.
Something that was in my mind from the start, but we never discussed it, and I don't think we could have tried to create it. But I was certainly, for my own designs, trying to think of something for each season. Mm-hmm. So the seasons in the forest were very much on my mind as part of the design collection. But that was also one of the hardest things, was trying to get things done in time for seasonal photos. I'm very impressed that Emily managed to get her bluebell cardigan done in time for bluebells. My scarf Pravagan was not at all done at the right time. If you saw the Instagram teasers, you know, it was very much inspired by those snowy fir trees on the ski slopes. But it was only finished in the summer.
Oh.
And if you look at the photos, it was actually modeled in summer. I just had to try and get somewhere where you couldn't see too much of the greenery around me.
Yeah.
And mixing that with photos that we all took. We all collected pictures of the forests where we were throughout the whole time that we were working on the book, and then just used those interspersed with the modeled shots to create the right mood.
Yeah, I even love how the colors of the forest as it changes are matched with the designs in the actual photograph. There's a lot of attention to detail. It's lovely.
Yeah. I really feel that we were all very much inspired by the forest and very much drawing on a real connection to that idea. And it was just a lot of fun. I was worried at one point that we might be creating something that was a bit too literal to browns and greens. But as you say, it's coherent and it works so well.
It really does. And
we talked a lot. Sorry, just we did talk a lot with each other about what we were all doing and what colors we were using. So we were very consciously trying to make sure that there would be a good balance of styles and garments, types of garment or accessory, and also color and yarn choice.
That's what I was just about to ask you, was how did you choose your yarns then for the collection?
Well, we were all working separately and following our own ways of choosing things. In some cases, of course, we were using stash. In other cases, maybe talking to particular yarn companies. I can't say for sure, but I think Emily decided on the yarn for Down Duff, her sweater with a spiral yoke, after talking to the people from Midwinter Yarns. I think she met them at Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year.
Okay.
And that choice was made then. I'm not sure. In my own case, I did an awful lot of shopping. It was actually quite frustrating because I've got way too much stash and I do not want more yarn. But none of the yarn that I had was actually suitable for the designs I had in mind. So there was a lot of shopping involved, a lot of trying out different things and swatching, and I've ended up with all kinds of extra balls lying around, which is annoying. But the designs came out just right.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, in general terms, I tend to start with a very practical problem to solve, like I need to keep my kids warm, or I want a particular kind of sweater for myself, and I'll try and design to fit that wardrobe need. Or I might be stimulated to do something with a particular stitch pattern that I see. For instance, the Unterholz cowl in Lost in the Woods.
Yeah.
That came because I saw lotus stitch somewhere and I thought that would be fun to play with. So I took 2 colors of yarn. I hadn't seen it done in 2 colors before, but I was curious to see what effect I could get. And I absolutely loved the results. I loved the way I ended up with one layer floating on top of the underlayer and what possibilities that opened up for color play. So then it was just a question of what can I do to make the most of the stitch pattern, and a really simple cowl seemed like the best thing. I'm still quite keen to try doing something like wrist warmers with the same stitch. So Unterholz wristies would be a good matching accessory.
Yeah, I really like the green. The green, like the brown on top of the green, is gorgeous.
The green was actually from my stash. That was possibly the one stash yarn that made it in the whole collection.
But that's okay then.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah. But it does really look good. I mean, that bright green peeking through in those little pearl bumps is it's perfect for suggesting those little green buds of spring leaves. So it was exciting to me to get that exact result. I made the chunky cowl first and then the light one. And I loved how they both seemed very foresty in quite different ways.
How did you decide to break up the patterns the way that you did? Because there's something for everyone. It goes from textured stitches to cables to lace to color work. Is it just each designer had a preference for a particular type of knitting, or how did you
No,
go about it?
I think we all like all of the techniques really. We're three designers who have very varied tastes, not just between us, but each of us is keen to try different techniques. So we didn't sort of go about saying, well, you can do cables and you can do lace. It really came quite organically from, we decided at the beginning that we wanted to each do 4 patterns, each 2 garments and 2 accessories. We agreed on the kind of way we would spread the complexity around. We didn't want to have only very advanced or very simple patterns. We also didn't want to have only like lace weight, only heavy yarns. We wanted a good variety. And then we discussed various ideas. Some ideas got dropped, other things came up in the process. There was certainly at least one idea of mine that got dropped completely, and I put the Unterholz cowl in its place. It was just something we didn't start with a very set framework for what we were going to do, but we did start with the understanding that we wanted to have a good spread, and every idea was discussed in terms of the whole collection. Was this going to fit with everything else, or were we going to end up with too much grey or too many cowls, or we didn't want to repeat too much of the same thing. In the end, I mean, I looked at Emily's hat, Drumashi, and my Ravaghan scarf, and they're both sort of white on green, fluffy yarn on a dark background, but they're still quite different. And I think we can get away with that, although it's a bit close, possibly. But each design is perfect for the inspiration that it's trying to reflect, so I can live with that.
Yeah, I love. I actually, it's one of these books that I could just keep to look at because the photography and styling is just so pretty. It's like I want to have it on my coffee table, and it's there aren't an awful lot of kind of knitting books like that. Like this, I'd easily just open a different page every day just to look at the photography. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Well, credit must go to Julia for that. She's the art director. As I say, it was her concept in the first place. She's a graphic designer by trade. She's also a great photographer. Most of the pictures in the book are hers. And she had that very clear vision for what she wanted to do, that we wanted to go with the lookbook structure and lots of pictures, make it really lush. And I love that we were able to do that. I love that we were able to really make it something where the inspiration and the mood behind it is so integral to the collection. We've actually, of course, talked about whether it would be possible to get it as a printed book. We did the layout with that in mind, that at any point it would be possible to put it up on MagCloud and do print to order. But at this point, we're probably not going to do it because it's just so expensive. Everything that makes it such a desirable book to have in printed form, all those gorgeous pictures, also make it enormously expensive to print.
But we live in the age of the Kindle, so
Yes.
yeah, it's stunning. Can I ask the descriptions for each of the patterns? Did one person write all of them, or did you each write them individually?
That was me. I am a copywriter by profession and an editor. So I was the romance copy person. Of course, Julia and Emily would come up with something as a starting point, and then I would just polish it a bit. In most cases, I was just working with what they had, not writing something from scratch, but there were different levels of involvement.
Yeah.
Emily was the more technical person, so she made a fantastic contribution on the technical editing side. We also had a separate tech editor who looked at Emily's own patterns, but Emily did a really good job of making sure that everything was consistent and clear and correct. I didn't realize when we were first putting our team together just how well we would balance each other. But we really did all have something different to contribute that was very important.
And how did you decide to do the release of the patterns the way that you did?
That was something we talked about a lot. We thought that releasing them one by one would have the advantage of firstly giving us a bit more time to polish off the last patterns while the early ones were going out. But mostly it was just a marketing thing. We thought it would be a lot easier to get attention if we drip fed things one by one, rather than if we just released, this is our collection, look at it. When you put patterns out on Ravelry, there's always the first few days have a big impact. If something gets attention in those first few days, it's likely to be at least reasonably successful. If it's just quiet, then it's going to be very hard to build a buzz after that. It's just in the nature of things that in the first few days of release, that's your best chance to actually make an impact. So releasing patterns one by one was largely just a marketing ploy to try and make the most of every time we were able to release something. And it was just so much fun.
It was a lot of fun. The knit along at the moment, how is that going? Because there's a lot of fun in your group at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been quite quiet so far. We're talking about things, but we haven't seen a lot of actual progress on knitted stuff. I'm guilty there as well. I've started Julia's beautiful Tielenbruch shawl, but I haven't posted any photos. And I think part of that is because a lot of people, including me, have been very busy in the gift along.
Yes.
So that's been a little bit of a clash there.
And you've joined the gift along this year, haven't you? Or you were part of the gift along last year?
And the year before that. I've been participating as a designer for 3 years and as a customer for all 4 years. It's just too much fun.
It really is. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about the gift along, just in case they don't know about it?
Okay, well, the gift along is a great big annual party on Ravelry for indie designers. It kicks off with about 10 days of a discount in which the designers participating all offer 25% off a selection of patterns, up to 20 patterns from their own self-published designs. But it's not all about the discount, not at all. That's just to get things started. And then until the end of December, it carries on as a big knit along or crochet along with very active threads and a lot of chatter happening. So there are prizes, there are random games, ask a question about the designers. I'm not describing it very well. The best way to is actually have a look in the group, the Indie Design Gift Along on Ravelry. It's just a lot of fun. It's very motivating. I've had so much fun, not as a designer, but just as a knitter every year. I'm a selfish knitter. I'm not really someone who knits for other people very much. And I'm not somebody who likes to knit things like toys and novelties. But every year I get a little bit carried away, and it's just such a great chance to make the things I wouldn't normally make, give something to my friends who wouldn't normally be so lucky as to get something from me, and enjoy the very great gratification of just quickly churning a few things off the needles. It doesn't have to be small things, of course, and you can do sweaters. There are patterns from absolutely every possible category of knitting and crochet. And a lot of people do bigger projects as well. It's just, for me, it's usually a question of finding some small things to knit to get the best possible, the quickest possible results, and satisfy that urge of, yes, I can do it. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. Oh, great, awesome. So far this year, I've made a little owl mug cozy, which I would never make a mug cozy. It's ridiculous. You can't wear it, but it's adorable and it keeps your tea mug hot. And that's a friend for somebody who loves owls and loves tea, so it seems sensible. And I've made a coaster, a splat cat coaster, which you have to look up on Ravelry. It's a ridiculous pattern. A little bit morbid, but in the best possible way.
It's fine.
And now I'm working on something else for someone else who might listen to this, so I'm not going to say what it is. But yeah, bunch of little toys and silliness.
I know I've made I think quite a lot of tea cozies in the last while, which is not like me at all, and it's for the similar reason. It's for gifting. Um, so I do I've learned an awful lot actually, like techniques that I normally wouldn't
Yes,
need, or it's been a lot of fun.
exactly. Yeah, as a designer, it's a great opportunity for me to follow other people's patterns and see what I can learn about how differently they do things, new techniques, different ways of communicating things that I wouldn't have thought of. So yeah, so it's just a great opportunity. It's motivation for me to knit from other people's patterns, which otherwise I don't often do. And it's just a blast.
It is. Well, the one thing I love about both your website and actually coming on to talk about your newsletter is that they are just so much fun. The newsletter especially because I've been a subscriber for a while, and I think sometimes in some months when it's really busy, it's the only way that I get like knitter information from the rest of the world. Because your newsletter, unlike a lot of designers, isn't just about you. It's about anything that you find fun and informative that's out there at the moment. How do you come up with what goes in there?
Well, as I've mentioned, I spend far too much time on Twitter. Um, the email service that I use is called Revue, Revue, and I love it. It makes it incredibly easy for me to collect ideas as I come across them. There's one of those little browser bookmarks. So if I find an interesting website or something, I just click it. It's very much like pinning to Pinterest. Just click the bookmark, it gets saved into Revue. And when it's time for me to actually put my newsletter together, I just spend about an hour going through all the things I've saved up, pulling in the ones that I want to use for that issue, writing a few lines. And of course, the challenge is often trying to write the little intro bit and the goodbye bit are the hardest, and trying to pull things together into some kind of structure so it's not just random links. But as I've mentioned, I've got journalistic background. So I like writing and I think with a kind of editor's brain. So even as I'm collecting the things, I'm already thinking about how I want to write about them, what kind of themes I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I mean, the question of whether that's an appropriate newsletter for a designer to send out that's an open question. Some people would say that it's not a smart marketing move. It's not helpful because customers want to know about me. They want to know about my work. It's the people who I'm writing for. If I'm writing a general craft newsletter, are not the people who are necessarily going to be buying my patterns.
Mm.
And that may well be true, but I know that I don't have enough output as a designer to write any kind of interesting letter about just what I'm doing. That would be hard. It would be boring for me. And what I'm doing now is just a huge amount of fun. I keep saying that, but everything that I'm working on at the moment is just the things that make it enjoyable for me to keep myself motivated.
I think that's one of the reasons why designers do well. It's because it has their personality and they enjoy what they do, and it comes across to the customer that
Yeah.
this person really puts a lot of thought and effort into it. Um, and I know, like with a lot of the designers that I see, they really do love what they do, and everyone has such a different view on yarn, on construction, on techniques that almost every time you pick up a new pattern from another designer, it's like another view into a different world of looking
Yes.
at yarn,
Yeah.
and I love that. I really
Yeah.
do. Um,
I'm also a big believer in letting your personality out online. And
oh
we've
yeah,
talked about, the question of authenticity, and that's also part of it. I don't want to just put out a marketed version of myself. I don't want to try and be a brand. I just want to express where I'm at. I need to, for personal reasons, I really need to just vent on Twitter sometimes about how incredibly frustrated I am with my kids not giving me any time to work or
Yes.
whatever it may be. I try not to be too negative, but yeah, there's venting.
I vent too. I vent a lot.
Twitter is so good for venting because people always come back and say, yeah, I know. Yeah. I've been there. And it really, really helps.
Yeah, I think that's the online community is just, they're brilliant for support when you feel isolated and alone, and especially if you work from home. Like I work from home as well, and it just having that other person that you can chat to, or almost like, you're accountable, even if, you're not, but it kind of makes you feel like you'll get things done, or you're actually not wasting time or losing your mind.
That is just so important. I mean, I work from home, and not only that, as I say, I mean, I moved to a new country a few years ago. So I've moved country twice now, and, online connections are just the best. Being able to stay connected to my old friends. And yes, of course, one must make new friends. And of course, I need to also be speaking with people here in German. But when German is just so hard, and it's incredibly exhausting, and I just want to hide in my room, I can still have a social connection to people. Thanks to the magic of the interweb. It's glorious.
And do you have any other hobbies, Robyn?
I don't know if I do. I love to read. I love film. I used to keep up really well with what was going on in the film world, but I haven't had any time for that, especially since babies. And yeah, knitting is pretty all-consuming for me. I think if it were just the knitting, then no, that I would still have room for other things. But between babies and knitting and design, which is almost a separate thing, I don't have much time. There are things that I would love to explore. I periodically feel like I really need to get good at sewing. I would love to get good at photography, but they all require a time commitment that I don't have, and an energy commitment that I don't have, frankly. I just want to be working on my knitting. It just sounds very boring.
No,
but I don't like it, so.
No, I spend days giving out that I don't get to knit because of little ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand completely. So what are your favorite yarns to work with? Because you have quite a varied amount through your patterns.
Yeah, I love lots of different things. I can tell you more easily almost what I don't like. I don't want to say I'm a yarn snob, because I think there's a place in the world for everything, but I really don't enjoy knitting with acrylic. I also, on the complete opposite end, really don't enjoy working with merino silk singles, which so many indie dyers have, because it looks amazing. It feels soft and lovely, but literally every time I touch it, I'm just thinking the pilling, the pilling, the pilling. I like yarn that I can trust to be a little bit more robust. I love soft, luxurious yarns, but they need to have a little bit of toughness to them. One of my favorite yarns at the moment is blue-faced Leicester, and I'm thinking particularly of a lightweight kind of a 3-ply, fairly loosely spun blue-faced Leicester that I've gotten in similar forms from Fleece Artist and also from the Swiss dyers Woolworks. And right now I'm wearing a Hap cardigan designed by Emily, my Lost in the Woods collaborator, which it was such a pleasure to knit with. The yarn has got life and bounce. It's soft. It takes color beautifully. It's warm. It's woolly. And it's still got a little bit of robustness to it. It's not a pill monster. I can wear it and it feels luxurious, but it's also going to survive.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I know. I have a cardigan in Lima, which actually drops Lima, and it's because of the alpaca, it pills quite a lot.
Yeah.
And when you're holding children, especially on the hip, their feet tend to kick quite a lot, and it's like one side of the cardigan is like immaculate, and the
Yeah.
other side looks like my dog got it.
Yeah.
So
Not really what you want.
no,
Effort into knitting something. You want it to survive more than a few months.
yeah. Oh, previous patterns. Your one of the ones that actually drew me to you as a designer was the shawl pattern that you did with Yvonne from the Dublin Dye Company.
Yes.
That is stunning. How did
Thank
you
you.
come up with that?
Well, firstly, I think of that more of as a cardigan than a shawl.
That's
Although
true,
I'm
sorry.
never sure how to describe it because, yeah, in the ads I've said it's the shawl, the cardigan that thinks it's a shawl.
Yeah.
How did I come up with it? I actually have this commercial cardigan in my wardrobe, which is just literally a stocking stitch rectangle with sleeves stuck on, just holes cut out and the sleeves added.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly wearable. It's very plain, very basic, but very easy to wear and looks quite elegant with absolutely no decoration. So I was curious to experiment with that shape, but I thought it has to be a really lightweight fabric to work well, to drape nicely. So I knew I was looking at lace weight, and there's absolutely no way that I was going to be making a huge stocking stitch lace weight rectangle without any embellishment. That would just drive me crazy. So I thought it would be fun to play with the fronts as if they were a lace shawl and make that a really dramatic focal point. And I had a wedding to go to, which I needed a wrap for. So I thought, awesome, I'll make this for the wedding. And I wore it to a different wedding a whole year later. Took me quite a lot longer to knit than I'd expected, mostly because of the children. I love knitting complex things, but you can't do lace and beading while you're watching toddlers. There's just no way.
No. And I love how it's like it almost has this beautiful waterfall front almost.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, you can wear it like a shawl. You can pin it closed anyway, or like it is a very luxurious cardigan. Well, cardigan shawl. Yeah, I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure how to describe it. Garment.
I think probably a wrap is the best way to describe it, a
Yeah.
sleeved wrap.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it is. It's very luxurious. That's almost the downside because you put all the effort into knitting it, and then it's very much a special occasion garment. At least in my version. I believe somebody else has been making it in a slightly more everyday yarn and planning to wear it with jeans, which would be really fun, I think.
Oh.
I'm curious if I can use the same pattern to make a 4-ply version without adjusting. Somebody else was trying that as well, and I want to know how that's coming out. Because, yeah, if it doesn't need gauge adjustment, you can just use the same 4-ply yarn. If it does need gauge adjustment, then I want to do a whole new pattern for it. I just think that would be a nice, fun alternative.
Which pattern are you most proud of to date? Because you have a few up there on Ravelry that are stunning. Um, I I'm being drawn to some of the children's patterns, I have to say, but that's because I'm biased at the moment.
Well, thank you very much. And that's nice to hear because my children's patterns have, for the most part, not been very successful. I think a lot of kids' patterns just tend to get less attention than adult garments or accessories, which I can understand, unless you are an established kids designer. There are a lot of people who, made that their niche and they do wonderfully. Which pattern am I most proud of? I think it would have to be Pavonis, this lace cardigan wrap thing. It was obviously quite an ambitious thing. I had to figure out the construction myself. I wasn't trying to copy anything that I'd done before. I'm sure there are other things that have a similar construction, but this one was my own invention. So it was challenging. It was challenging because I'd made everything up myself from the construction to the stitch pattern. I didn't follow anything. I played around and got it to where I wanted it. So it was fairly epic. And I think the results are wonderful. I'm really, really proud of that one. And Elf Baby Hat has a very special place in my heart.
It's my favorite. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. It's really cute. It's done extremely well. Elf Baby is a very regular seller for me. It's the most successful pattern I have, I think.
Yeah.
Although Pravagan might be competing on that front now. But it's great because it's a fun thing to knit. You can do it in, whatever yarn you have sitting around, whatever sock yarn at least. I've written it for everything from baby to adult sizing, but I haven't seen anyone actually make it in an adult size, I don't think. And that makes sense. It suits babies.
I have 2 toddler ones. Yvonne gifted me one, and from the Dublin Dye Company,
Yeah.
and I had to make one for baby number 2. So I have matching elf babies. But how did you make the leap into designing?
It didn't feel like a leap. I'm one of those people who's always made up their own patterns, mostly because in South Africa we didn't have any yarn shops nearby. Patterns were sort of not that easy to come by, and also just in my family nobody ever worked from patterns, ever. So I started collecting Vogue knittings from about high school on, whenever I could find them, but mostly inspiration. I hardly ever actually made something from the magazine. I would just figure out what I wanted to do and do it. Frequently making all kinds of really peculiar errors on the way, and it was years before I really understood about knitting to specified gauge, so that was an interesting lesson. But yeah, I thought of myself as a designer for a long time when I really, really, really wasn't. And I wanted to start designing for publication. Took me a long time to actually get around to it, though, and then the first thing I did write up was my Twist and Shout cabled cardigan pattern, which I published when I was pregnant with Claudia. And as I say, she was a really pretty demanding baby, so that put paid to pretty much all designing possibilities for a few years. I made a few little things, this and that, and you'll see a few patterns on my page from that period, but nothing that I was really proud of until between Twist and Shout, which I am still proud of. And then the next thing that I made that I thought was really successful was the Elf Baby Hat. And now I feel like I'm just starting to have time and mental space to really do the kind of designing that I'm interested in. In between, it was largely the children's things, because as I say, I was trying to solve a problem for what does my kid need right now. And it was always more fun to come up with a design idea than just pick a pattern.
Yeah, it's I have to say the photography. There's the flower cardigan is beautiful, or flower, but
Yeah.
I like that. And I don't know how you managed to get her to sit like that, but it's beautiful.
I don't know either. Yeah, of course, that's also the problem with designing for kids, is getting kids to model. That's quite hard. My husband does most of my photography, and sometimes he's also just not in the mood for fighting with a grumpy kid, and sometimes the kids are just not in the mood for doing it, and it can be really tedious. But when the results are good, they're great. And some of my other kids' patterns, the Wiggly Warmers and Mare Mitts, I'm quite surprised at how well those photos came out, because we got some really cute pictures. If you look at Claudia's face in some of them, you can see she's got a bit of attitude going on there, but it comes out very cute. But yeah, she was just itching. We were at a swimming pool. She was swimming, and we had to haul her out and dry her off and put her in a jacket and say, sit here in the shade and pretend you're cold. It's like, can I go swim now? Can I go swim now? Can I go swim now? Okay, now you can
go. Yeah, kids and what you want and what they want, it doesn't.
It's not the same, no. And be fair, modeling is a job. I also really hate modeling. So, I'm using her unpaid labor.
Yeah.
I won't complain if she complains.
It's like, here, have some ice cream or a
Yeah.
treat or, yeah. Bribery is my friend too.
She loves it when I knit for her, so that's the plus side. She knows she's getting something out of it in the end.
Yes.
Once the photos are taken, the sample's all hers.
My toddler will now bring me yarn that she likes the color of. She'll go,
Oh,
pretty, pretty,
pretty. Yeah, it's exactly that.
pretty,
For
pretty.
me, for me.
And for me, yeah. I'm glad that isn't just my toddler, but yeah,
Oh.
she does. That's what she does. But are there more children's patterns in your future, or what does the future hold for you?
I'm trying not to be too firm on my ideas because I'm also still trying to figure out my work life more generally. My younger kid is going to start kindergarten in August, and I would really like to be having some kind of structure in my days at that point beyond just designing for myself, which I love doing. But as I've said, I like working with other people. I would like to be in some kind of a team or a partnership. And I would like to be earning more money because designing is totally a hobby for me at this point. It's a lot of fun, but I'm not really making any kind of financial contribution to the family. Maybe that will change with time as I build up my portfolio, but I'm not expecting a lot. So I'm trying to keep my goals a little bit vague in terms of how much do I want to produce or where do I really hope to land up. But I can say that the direction I want to go in is I want to do a lot more adult knits. Not that there will never be kids knits, but I'm more interested in designing adult things. I want to try doing more shawls and garments because I was always a garment knitter, and in the last 10 years, I guess, since I started pearlescence and I had very little time, I have knit hardly any garments. And firstly, my wardrobe could really use some. And secondly, I miss that. I miss being able to create a wardrobe from knitting. I miss the construction possibilities of sweater knitting. There's a lot that I want to explore still. Will there be more kids knits? It's not the most inspiring area for me, but I still have children and they are a constant source of inspiration. So there's one thing I'm working on right now that will be a cowl with variants for kids and adults. So there's certainly at least one more kid pattern coming up. At least one.
And people can find you on Twitter, Instagram, Ravelry, and your blog.
Yep. And of course my newsletter.
Newsletter. I will add show notes. I will add all the links into the show notes as well. And you still have one surprise pattern to come out from Lost in the Woods.
Yes, indeed.
And that goes live in January?
Late January or early February. I don't have a firm deadline for it. And with the nature of the pattern being what it is, I'm fairly comfortable keeping that a little bit loose.
Okay, so still surprises to come though.
There's one more surprise to come. It's a garment, and that's all I'm going to tell you.
It's okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Robyn. It's lovely to get to chat to you, and hopefully we'll be hearing more from you soon. And of course, because this is the Christmas episode, have a happy Christmas. I hope you enjoy the holidays at home.
Thank you, Nadia. It was a lot of fun talking to you too. Happy Christmas.
And same to you. Hello and welcome back. I hope that you all have a smile on your face like I did when I was listening and editing the audio for today's show. I really enjoyed chatting to Robyn, and if you're looking for any of the information from today's show, pattern sites or social media, you will find them all on the show notes on cottagenotebook.ie/podcast. You can find Robyn online Twitter, Instagram and Pinterest as Woolly Thinker, and you can find her website, Studio Miranda, studiomiranda.com. From all of us here, I hope you have a very happy new year, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. If you can't wait, or you want to chat about anything coming up on today's show or coming up in future podcasts, or you want to see which Cal I've joined in 2017, then you can pop along to the Facebook group or our Ravelry group. I'm there as Cottage Notebook, and you can also find me on Twitter. So all that's left to do is say thank you so much for listening to the end of today's podcast, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.